And we're starting, I hope, on screen with Tord Stalvik, CEO of Redwheel, who is going to explain how he's got involved and why he's got involved in this project. Over to you, Tord.
Thank you, Helena. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm with my wife's family in the U.S. for Thanksgiving, which, if you go back to the cartoon, I think Thanksgiving with family is a good example of sometimes people looking the same, but actually thinking wildly differently. So it does go both ways sometimes. So I just wanted to share for a few minutes my reflections as CEO of a specialist active manager, how I think about diversity and how I see it in our business and from my own experience. And very specifically, our business is focused around giving investment teams a lot of autonomy. So it's a bit analogous to a multi-boutique model. And so, how those teams work or sometimes not work is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, as well as for the overall business, of course. So I think as with other professional service businesses in asset management, our actual assets walk out of the door every day. And so really thinking about how you get the most out of those assets and how you make people want to be part of the team, I think is it's a critical factor in being successful. And so my experience from having been doing this for 35 years is that diversity can be a great strength, but it is hard to evidence how that actually comes into play, as Helena mentioned. And really also thinking about how to then build on that strength. And that is what drew me to the Cognitive Diversity Project kind of specifically, but I think also around diversity in general to the Diversity Project. I think it's been a really engaging experience for me to do this and to talk to other people who are, thinking about the same issues that I'm thinking about. When I look at cognitive diversity, I see sort of three dimensions. This is just based on my own experience and also, how I see it in the business today. I think it's really along sort of three dimensions being why, how, and when. So the why is sort of obvious. It's our experience telling us that it can be a strength, and I'll come back to that with an example. The how is really how you then put it into play, like building frameworks that put the benefits of diversity into practice. It could be quite different for different organizations, but I'm hoping that the work that we're doing will help us draw out some key lessons that can be used, in many different types of organizations, and we can employ those to do a better job. And then the when. The when is knowing when to actually turn off the framework. So you build the frameworks, you try to get the most out of your teams, but sometimes maybe working together isn't actually the right thing to do. So I want to cover that a little bit as well. So on the why, I think this one is sometimes for me actually the easiest is to look at examples where things have actually not worked well. So it's sort of a negative proof, if you will, suggesting that diversity is better. And while I've had the privilege of working with a lot of very smart people in the industry, I've had a few experiences in my life where people have gone through some very, very difficult situations, tied to challenging conditions in markets, maybe abrupt changes that lead to real pressure on decisions. And having seen teams that look like they were functioning very, very well, have a really difficult time when you see that there's real groupthink and there's nobody challenging the conventional wisdom for why, we were doing things the way we were doing them. And so on the why for me, partly as a risk management tool, saying there are times when everybody thinking the same clearly leads to some great problems, which then is sort of in the negative proves that having something different than that, having a more collective, process would work better. The how, again, going back to my specific, business, as we all know, portfolio managers can be, particular kinds of people, and they can be quite strong-minded. And so how do you find a balance between these very talented individuals, having a strong say in, the outcomes and the decisions that are being made, but actually doing that in a collaborative way with the team that helps, provide some challenge, that helps provide different perspectives, that help make better decisions when, you're coming together and doing that. So the frameworks around how you actually put this into practice is something that I'm very, very interested in. But then on the when, and so I'm sure as many of you, I've done a few management courses through my career. And one in particular that I thought was a very good example of this was something I did a few years ago with a sort of intensive course for CEOs. And the example, I'm sure maybe some of you have seen this one actually, it's a case study where in our case we had 40 people split up into groups of 5, so 8 groups. And the problem that was presented to us was a crisis situation that would not be something that most of us would have ever actually seen. And so the example is around being stranded in a storm on a sailboat. And the way you kind of score the example, the way you're actually doing the work, is by having to pick particular items and prioritize those items out of a longer list of items available to you. So the point is, how do you actually survive in that circumstance, and how do you get to a place of safety? The way the project worked was that each of us individually on each team, so 5 different people, would first score the priorities of the things that we thought we would need, and then collectively we would discuss what might be the best solutions. And in 7 out of the 8 teams, nobody individually scored better than the collective decisions that were taken. And so this project is obviously set up by somebody who knows exactly what would make the most sense. And so you have a very sort of strong, positive affirmation that having collective decisions rather than singular decisions is a better way to go about finding solutions. But then, however, in the 8th group, we had one of my cohort colleagues was an ex-Special Forces general in the US who had been in situations more or less exactly like the example that was given. And in that particular case, his score was higher than everybody else's score collectively or individually, and his score individually was also higher than his team score. And so that proves to me that there are some times when you need to look around the room and say, well, actually, there's one person here who really does know the right answer. And so now it's not a time where we're going to draw on everybody's experience, but we're actually going to listen to the person who is the true expert in the room. So I think sometimes, again, using examples of when it works and when it doesn't work, looking at it from both perspectives, is a very effective way of coming up with honest answers about what makes most sense. In conclusion, I would say for me, clearly my experience tells me getting diverse inputs helps make better decisions, even though sometimes maybe it is not the right thing to do. So with that, I want to hand it over to Aaron, who will lead us into the discussion with Alex. Thank you very much, everyone.
So thanks very much, Tord. Thanks very much, Helena, for bringing us to this point. And we're really going to basically explore if there is a linkage of the cognitive diversity of an investment team and its investment performance. So really related to what we do day in, day out, where very much where the focus of the diversity project is. And basically picking it up, I guess the roots of the project over the course of the last few months, there have been a lot of factors that have sort of catalyzed this. So we've had the DEI backlash in the US, and very regrettably, even in the last few days, Walmart have backtracked on some of their DEI policies and strategies as well. And so just this case for diversity, equity, and inclusion within teams, and for our industry specifically within the an investment team, is something where it's really worth exploring to see what a very tangible case and benefit could be made from the context of examining the business case for this. And so what we did was we basically formed a team, and a huge thanks to all of the volunteers that have been part of the project, and you'll see their names shared there. Very capably led by Helena, who's been driving the work for all of us. And when we talk about cognitive diversity, it's really important just to be very clear on the definition that we chose to use. And so it's really on diversity of thought. Obviously, diversity and neurodiversity, and there are obviously different language which can be used. But for us, it was really diversity of thought and the thinking within an investment team. And so what we did was we kind of moved forward. We did a literature review of sorts, of the best efforts that we could manage. We went across, did a lot of reading to find out, and we came across a lot of concepts. So the concept of groupthink, obviously, as Tord has mentioned, the concept of psychological safety, and also it kind of took us down the road of culture and corporate culture, and the role that that may well play within this the context of trying to best answer our questions. Moving forward from there, what we wanted to be sure was that we didn't want to go in with any preconceived ideas. So the reality is that we don't have the answer. But what we are is we're very open to seeing where the findings may take us with respect to this research project. So that was very much the idea of coming in very much with an open mind. And if there is a linkage, then that's fantastic. That really helps us to make the case, very solidly. And if there isn't a linkage, then we've got the moral argument in terms of diversity. We also have, obviously, the benefit of inclusion and making that in terms of business performance and inclusivity of a corporate culture. That can also be a case that can be made very, very credibly. So we wanted to come in with an open mind, and that's the direction that we took. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to announce that from the submissions that we had from all over the world, we're very glad to have chosen Alex Edmans to carry out the piece of research for us. I've shared Alex's post from LinkedIn with respect to how he plans on developing the research further, and it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Alex and to Helena to pick up a conversation on that. Just prior to that, what I want to share is that potentially this is groundbreaking research that we've not seen before. We've had some amazing reviews that have happened here in the UK. We've had the Hampton-Alexander review, the Parker review, the Kay review. So we're really hoping that we're going to have some huge, huge visibility and huge implications from the findings of the research, irrespective of the decision, irrespective of the direction in which the research actually takes us. But it should hopefully form a backbone for decision making on the part of senior corporates throughout our industry. So with that, gives me great pleasure to invite Alex and Helena to the stage. Thanks very much.
Yeah, just take a seat. Thank you for setting it out so beautifully. And I'd like to introduce Alex Edmans, Professor Alex Edmans of London Business School, who I have actually had the pleasure of working with many years ago, actually, and delighted that you were selected by our esteemed panel that we had. So thank you, Alex, for submitting a proposal. So it was put in rather small writing up there. I want to give you the chance to probe, Alex, whether you're online. I have an iPad here where your questions will come through, or in the room, you can raise your hand and then use the microphone, or you can, I suppose, send me the question. And you can also click on the QR code to get involved. There's going to be a sort of structured interviews. But first of all, I am going to ask Alex to elaborate a little bit on why you were keen to get involved with this, but also then how you're going to conduct the research.
Well, first, a huge thank you to inviting me to do this research. It's a huge pleasure to partner. And I'm so sorry about my voice. So I've had a huge month of teaching, and it ends with a sort of life lecture where I speak to students about the importance of pursuing a career that's purposeful and not just lucrative, and also making sure that you do this in the right way, not just to make money. It's a topic I'm very passionate about, but was so passionate about that I sort of blew out my own voice. So I apologise that you're having to deal with
It's
the
a
remnants.
good reason
Yes,
for having a croaky voice.
But why do I want to get involved in this project? It's an extremely important topic. We want to maximise the quality of decision making. There's a lot of logic behind this. Involves a big diversity of perspectives. I often work on projects as the only academic with lots of practitioners. I brought in practitioners to my own academic research. It's something I strongly believe in, but what I want to look at is this in terms of the investment industry, given the centrality of this industry to creating long-term returns for clients, but also improving company performance through stewardship and through engagement. And so how do I intend to conduct this project? So there'll be two main streams to this. The first is a literature review of the existing evidence that has been gathered. I'd like to stand on the shoulders of giants. And so there might be research in the finance field, but this is an interdisciplinary topic. There will be research in human resources, organizational behavior, organizational psychology, and not just academic research, but practitioner research. I want to look at what is there already and to try to build on that. And I like to look at, well, what is the high quality research, where the gaps are, where there might be something which is interesting, but it might not be specific to the investment industry. And so from that, I will identify the gaps and then to explore that with the structured interviews, which is the second part of the project. And so what the structured interviews involve is speaking to people, is getting my hands dirty in the real world with practitioners of all levels, both seniors and juniors, across different asset classes and different investment styles, to find out two things. Number one, is cognitive diversity linked to financial performance? And it might not always be. So maybe it works in some settings and not others. And what really impressed me is the task force was really open-minded as to type situations in which it might not work, as Tord shared. So that's the idea. Is it linked to performance, and if so, when? And second, well, how to improve cognitive diversity. So if it is indeed something which does improve financial performance, what can we do about it? What are the practices that we can do in terms of hiring a diverse mix of people cognitively, but also ensuring that we are developing an inclusive culture? And I really appreciate people who've already reached out to me and wanting to get involved, and this project could not happen without your participation. And I'm sure at the end there will be another QR code showing how you can get involved.
It's up there already.
Oh, it's already
yeah.
here. So, I will say that I'm going to be in listening mode first. So I am going through the literature review first to see what's out there, so that when I invite people to interact with me, I use your time efficiently. So if you do contact me and you don't hear back within a couple of weeks, please, that's not because I don't view it as important. I absolutely do want to use your time, but I do want to see what the open questions are first before knowing what to ask.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I did say it's good to set expectations so that people didn't volunteer and then be disappointed not to hear back and set an interview next week. A couple of questions have actually already come in, so I'm going to go to them so that I don't just. I've got some questions here that hopefully might be of interest, but I'm going to go to they're quite interesting. So one would be, I know how one might measure gender diversity or ability diversity or age-based diversity. How might one measure cognition or cognitive style and quantify a material difference between them?
That's a really important question. It's one that I don't know from the outset, which is why I want to be in listening mode and explore it. And this is also why the main research I'll be doing will be the structured interview. So normally with research, you have a clear measure, gender diversity, you correlate it with financial performance. But the reason why I'm not taking this approach here is it's not clear how to measure cognitive diversity. When I've looked at the literature, I've seen a variety of measures, but some of those measures don't actually have relevance with investment performance. So there's a great measure called the Object, Spatial and Visual Imagery Questionnaire, which is used quite a lot in academics, but that's on how we interpret visual information. That's not going to be clearly that useful within investment performance. So this is what's useful about me having the structured interview approach, is to ask people questions as to what are the dimensions of cognitive diversity that might matter in different settings. How do you go about measuring this? And I want to sort of learn from the experts as to what they're doing, then combine that with what I'm seeing in the scientific literature and through a diverse perspective and in terms of where I'm getting my information from, have a general set of measures. But it's very unlikely that I'm going to come up with a one-size-fits-all measure of cognitive diversity. Maybe for a more fundamentals-based asset manager, that might be different from a quantitative-based one. It might differ across asset classes as well.
Thank you. Next question. What role do you expect AI to play in identifying the gaps, and will it enhance the speed in which you expect to finalise this research? Are you going to be using AI at all, Alex?
So I think AI can be useful if you use it knowing its limitations. And so I think where it can be useful is through researching the literature. So anything which involves trying to get in a large set of information is valuable. So if I might ask it to search the literature in organizational psychology, which I might not know as well as the finance literature, they might be able to find it faster. But you then can't rely on AI saying, well, there's a paper which shows X, I will need to then get my hands dirty, read that paper very carefully. So I think it will alert me to potential things to look at, but then I need to read it myself, because the AI itself is biased. It's based on some algorithms which can be based on just what people already think to be true than what might actually be true. And this is why also I'm going to have a very human approach of speaking to people.
I should pause and just see, does anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question in the room? Yes, let's go. Gentleman there, sorry, if you can master the microphone.
Hello.
Yes, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Is this working?
Yep.
Yeah. Mark Hummel, nice to see you both. Alex, I understand the business reason for this study focusing on the asset management industry. What is being done differently because it's asset management relative to how you might be looking at this question generally?
So I think it will be the measures of cognitive diversity that I look at. So measures which look at how you interpret visual information, they might not be so relevant for the asset management industry. What might be measures relevant for the asset management industry? And here's just thinking off the top of my head, I haven't researched this directly yet, but you might want some people who are very optimistic, they can see the upside potential of an investment, and then some who might be more on the risk, the downside management case. So that might be something particularly relevant for an investment decision, which might not be so relevant for other types of decisions. And I think this is important because we think about cognitive diversity, but unlike, say, gender and age diversity, where there's a clear measure, as the first question was intimating, it's not clear how to measure this. And so what I want to do is to find out what are the most relevant measures for the asset management industry. And even if we look at this industry, it's not there is one asset management industry, there's different styles within the industry, so it may well be that there's different flavors of that measure depending on what type of asset manager you are.
Well, I'm going to choose this one next on the screen because it's one of the same ones I had. So how do you define the success of investment teams?
So what people typically think is you just look at long-term risk-adjusted returns. So that seems to be the best measure of financial performance. I've used that in my work to show that employee satisfaction pays off. But one of the difficulties is it's sometimes not very proximate. It can be that you have a diverse culture which leads to good decisions, and those good decisions did not lead to a good outcome, while there's lots of other variables, uncertainties that you truly could not have predicted. There is a phenomenon known as resulting, where we put too much attention on the result, not the actual decision. For example, if I'm playing blackjack and I'm on a 19, and I twist and I get a 2 and I get 21, well, that's a good outcome, but it was not a good decision. And so again, this is why it's useful to actually speak to the people, because you will have more proximate outcomes rather than just looking at something which can be quite distant. I can ask within in a team setting, what processes do you put in place which maximize the quality of your decisions? Now, there are costs and benefits, because one cost might be, well, how do you know whether this was a good decision? It may well be that a senior leader believes that he or she has led to good decisions because they are designing the processes. So this is why the diversity that I want to look at is not just by asset class, but by seniority, is speaking to junior people as to what practices and processes have been helpful in encouraging you to speak freely and what have been barriers. And so that will allow us to look at the actual decision, not just the outcome of the decision. If I can do a combination of both, that would be great. So it may well be tell me what improves the decision, and then can you evidence this? Can you tell me an investment that you have made or actually not made because you gave space to somebody to dissent and you didn't make this decision and this was a stock that went down afterwards? Obviously, when I get to the actual report, some of these things, depending on who I'm interviewing and what their views will be, we might keep these anonymous, but it will be useful to have a combination of, I think the decision was right, and in this case, the outcome was right. But sometimes I think focusing too much on the outcomes can lead to this problem of resulting.
Thank you. I'm going to give your voice 30 seconds off and take the next couple as a start myself. So these are two related questions. What happens if this research backfires and sees no correlation between cognitive diversity and performance? And then relatedly, because obviously it might have bearing on this. What impact do you think this research will have long term? Once you have established the findings, how do you see this having real transformational change? So I'm happy to just quickly say the first thing is we are completely open, as we said, and we explicitly, as Alex has also emphasized and Aaron emphasized, we said no, do not work backwards from the conclusion you think we might want to see because we call the diversity project. We said, tell us what the data says, tell us what the science says. And so if it is not, I don't think it would backfire. It would just mean we would stop arguing over whether there is a financial business case, and we would focus on the moral or social argument, which I think is at least as strong. But we would stop muddling the two, and we would have, and I'll turn to Alex's thoughts in a moment. But also, I just wanted to say, the plan would be that Alex will write a report, but we will work together on a practical guide. So if there are some clear things that companies could do to boost cognitive diversity where it's going to be effective, then we would hope to have a very practical result. We do not want this is not a sitting on the shelf gathering dust kind of effort. This is kind of to shake up the world, and I'm confident that if it comes up with some things that really are indicators of how you can create better investment performance, people might think, well, actually, that might apply to other areas of the world's work as well. So have you recovered a bit so you can have the next question?
Yes.
Do you want to add to that
Yes,
now? Because I
absolutely.
felt you're going to completely lose your voice.
So how Helen replied was how I would have done so, but in a much clearer voice. So I don't think
Oh, we're seamless
I don't
on
think
that one.
research can backfire because even if you find a non-result, it's still informative. So research finds what works and what doesn't work, and so you don't have backfiring. You're adding to knowledge. And what's really important is even if there is no correlation with financial performance, this means that you can get cognitive diversity for free. That means that we can pursue the moral case without a detriment to financial performance. And this is why I think when people highlight some of the dangers, some of the weaknesses in the demographic diversity research, this absolutely does not remove the case for demographic diversity. If there is no link to performance, then, well, there's no detriment, in contrast to a lot of the critics, which is, oh, this is at the expense of meritocracy. So I think that will be useful. And then in terms of the broader impact, this is why it's a huge honour for me to work on this project. So in fact, I was intending to work on it myself for my next book. So my last book may contain lies, which came out a few months ago.
Got a great one on organizational, how organizations can perform better, as well, a chapter on that. So I would recommend it, not that he's asked me to plug the book, but I just do.
Really appreciate it, Helena. So the most recent book, called May Contain Lies, is on two things. Well, number one is the correct interpretation of data and evidence, but number two, how to build smart thinking organizations which harness a diversity of viewpoints. And that particular chapter got a lot of excitement, so I'd already spoken to my publisher about having a second book on that topic called Diversity Done Right, was the working title. But I thought what's really exciting about this is this can come out faster. So rather than having to go through the long publication process, it comes out faster. It's available for free. So this is something where the Diversity Project wants to bring useful information and make this practical and accessible rapidly. And also, I could probably do a much better job on this, working with the Diversity Project, using its credibility within the asset management industry, using the inputs of people like you in the room and online to maybe get access to a larger set of information than I could if I just wrote it as a book myself. And yes, there's these great reviews like the K Review or the Hampton Alexander Review. Maybe I'm being overly ambitious here, but this would be my goal.
Overly ambitious.
Is to have it as impactful as those reviews, and something which is not just going to sit on the shelf. Because if so, I could just do more academic research. That's my day job. So why do I want to allocate my time to this? I really genuinely think it's something that can have a big effect.
Thank you, Alex. There are more questions, and I am going to suggest that we at least pass them along to you so that you can consider them. And if we can work out how to answer them, then I'm sure we will, or else they can be embedded into the research. As I say, there's another opportunity for you to write your details in there, and we've already been very bowled over really by the attention and interest that there has been globally in this, not just from the academics. I sit on a couple of US-based boards. They want to know what the answers are. I mean, they keep asking me like as if it's going to take 2 minutes to do this research. And I'm like, you've got to bear with us here. So we've taken our time. We've taken the best part of this year to get it structured right and to obviously find Alex to do it. And so please watch this space. Hopefully we'll have some very interesting results to share. before too long, and please get involved. But thank you so much, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks very much.